Hi, everybody. Welcome back to To Raise Questions, a doula podcast. I'm Melanie Russell, your host. I'm also the executive director of To Labor, which is a birth doula training and certifying organization. I'm also a birth doula myself. I've been practicing for almost 19 years now. I've attended 719 births as of today. I'm also a childbirth educator, certified lactation counselor, and I own a birth, wellness, and lifestyle collective called A Brighter Birth in Richmond, Virginia. I'm so excited to sit down today with Dr. Nicole Rankins, OBGYN, here in my own community. Can't wait for you all to listen to what we talk about. We have a very good time in here. And some of the topics that are brought up are about her own background, how she got started in birth work, which is always interesting to hear how a doctor begins their path. And we really dig into the gaps that are in modern medical care and where doulas fit in. We talk about what the role of a doula is and how we can best collaborate with the entire team. And we get into some nitty-gritty as well. So sit back, enjoy, and really glad you're here. All right. Hi, everyone. So we are here today with Dr. Nicole Rankins, which I'm very just thrilled, absolutely thrilled to have in the studio today with Dr. Nicole Rankins is an OBGYN. She is a mom of two. She's also a podcast host herself, Birth with Power. Please check it out. I've been listening. I'm a huge fan. Nicole, Dr. Rankins, what do I call you?
Girl, as long as we've known each other, stop it.
Nicole, it's so nice to see you here.
Nice to see you too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this for a while. Mm-hmm. It's been in the works.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you being flexible.
Yep.
We made it.
We made it.
I know you have a lot of other letters after your name.
I do. I'm pretty smart, actually.
I figured. I figured. Can you give us a rundown of all of the education you've received?
Sure. Yeah. So, I'm Dr. Nicole Calloway Rankins. I'm a practicing board-certified OBGYN. I also have a master in public health degree. My undergraduate degrees are actually math and mechanical engineering. Wow. So, okay. And I have been in practice for 23 years.
Oh my gosh. That's
and have had the privilege of helping over 2,000 babies into this world. I host a podcast, like you said, called Birth with Power. It's been downloaded over 2.8 million times now. So, and I'm a maternal health advocate. As you said, a mom of two brilliant children, a wife to my husband, Falcon. Yes, Falcon like the bird.
Yes.
So that's what I do.
Just that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that. We met, I think we've decided around 14, 15 years ago.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yep.
And so this was when you were working in a different hospital than you are now.
Yep.
You were also a different sort of OBGYN where you were in a practice that you were seeing patients prenatally. Yep. Mm-hmm. And I was hired to be a recruiter for a model of care called Centering Pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And we ran some groups together.
We did. Yeah.
I was so nervous too.
Same.
It's really good to hear that. I was hired to be a recruiter, which meant that I would actually go into the exam rooms and essentially poach these patients out of doctors' clinics, which did not, make me any big fans with the residents there.
Right.
But I did it. Mm-hmm. And then evolved into actually co-leading the groups with different providers. Right. And so I just remember begging you to do one. I was really excited that you had said yes. Yeah. And we had a lot of fun.
We did.
I still really like that model.
Yeah.
Have you run into that?
I haven't. It's a hard model to put into practice, like practically for a number of reasons, space and trying to get the groups together and things like that. But it's a great model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole idea was that, patients start their practice seeing the provider one-on-one, and then they jump to a group setting from like 16 weeks to 36 weeks, and then go back to the one-on-one care, having group appointments for 2 hours. It was cool.
Yeah. Yep.
And of course, I've been in births with you as well.
Correct.
At that hospital, and then where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you talk a little bit about, because now you're a hospitalist.
Yeah.
And what's the difference there between when you were in that different sort of practice to how you work now?
Yeah. So as a hospitalist, I only work in the hospital. I work on labor and delivery, and I do shift work, essentially 24-hour shifts at a time. And the hospitalist model came out for a number of reasons. One, it's safety. So there's an OBGYN in the hospital 24/7, which is always great because, as you know, birth is unpredictable and things can happen. So studies show that it definitely increases safety, reduces bad outcomes. But it also makes sure that somebody is there. It doesn't put that 5:00 pressure for a C-section because the doctor needs to go, or the doctor has to be up all night and then has to be in the office tomorrow. So it really decompresses a bit. So the private physicians sign out to us and we take over their care. So we're in the hospital. It doesn't matter if you have your birth at, 8:00 or midnight or 2:00, whatever, we're just going to be there. So it helps to do that. Studies have shown that it actually does decrease the C-section rate. So it's a good thing.
It's a really good thing. And I think more of the hospitals in our area have switched to this kind of model.
Yeah, almost all in this area. This area is a little unique in that pretty much almost all the hospitals do it, and the private practices all sign out their patients to us.
So essentially subcontract out those overnight
we're like
hours.
Extensions of their practice, essentially, yeah.
What are the benefits of this? I mean, I think you've already said a lot of the benefits. And what are the cons?
Yeah, you were reading my mind. There are some downsides. The biggest downside is that you don't know me before I walk into the room. So there's definitely an element of trust. And we have to establish trust very quickly. So you don't know who's going to be there for your birth, which can, as you might imagine, invoke some anxiety and concern. So that's probably the biggest downside.
What are some tools that you have developed now in this role to gain that trust quickly?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one is just using time to my advantage. I don't typically have to run. A lot of times doctors are in the office and they're running over to labor and delivery. So they have to move quickly. I just pull up a stool, sit down, chit chat. So I don't have to rush things, so to speak.
There's not a sense of urgency in that room.
Yeah. And then just always introduce myself, my role. You're making me think here. What else? This is some of it is so rote memory. I always ask if there's anything that people want for their birth that they want me to be aware of, and that helps to sort of establish that I'm concerned about what is most important for them.
I love that. That is something that I've seen you do, and I've seen other hospitalists do, midwives and physicians. And I think there's a glaring lack there when that doesn't happen, when there's not really an introduction. It feels like there's a rush. It feels like I'm just here to check your cervix and see where you are, and then I'll come back when your baby's being born.
Yeah.
Taking that time really makes an impact on the entire team, not just the birther, the partner, the doula, if there is one.
Yeah.
It really feels like the provider truly cares, because I think one of the hard parts too is that you lose a little bit of that. Like you said, you haven't built a relationship yet.
Right.
So you lose a little bit of that individualized care when you're meeting a stranger for the first time.
Yeah.
And that doesn't only happen when there's a hospitalist group. And
because most practices is going to be whatever
big.
Doctor's on call.
Exactly.
So yeah,
even midwifery practices.
That's
you
true.
might not have been able to meet all 9 midwives in the practice.
Yeah.
So I think that really makes a difference. Just coming in slowly, unless that patient came in hot.
Yeah. Then sometimes
you're trying to pull on gloves real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's back up a little bit. How did you even get into this work?
Being a hospitalist?
Working in birth.
That's a great question. Okay, so I decided to go to medical school because every time I tell this story, it sounds crazy, but it's the God's honest truth. When I was studying to finish my mechanical engineering degree, I looked in the mirror and I saw myself wearing a white coat. And it just
You had a vision.
planted the seed for me to go to medical school. So I did. I've always hated that, like, where you can be in 10 years, 5 years question, because I never know. Like, my life just sort of goes how it's going to go. So went to medical school. I for sure knew I wanted to take care of women. For sure, I knew I wanted to do things with my hands. I could not stand male patients. Because
that's valid.
I know I would get hit on and stuff. Like, it just was like, this is like, so, and then
men, if you're listening.
And then I just kind of fell into OBGYN. Interestingly, I thought I was going to do GYN cancer surgery because I liked to do surgery.
Yeah.
And I sort of fell into being a hospitalist in birth because where we were at our last institution or where we first met, I left that place under not the best circumstances.
Yeah.
So,
do you feel like you were burned out from doing the work?
That was some part of it. I mean, that was some part of it. It just wasn't the right place for me. And honestly, how I fell into being a hospitalist, because I thought my career was going to be academics. Like, I thought for sure I was going to be at academic medical center, do research. Like, I got 11 degrees or whatever. So that's what I thought. But another funny story, I was at my own OBGYN checkup and I was like, I need a job because my husband, because I left the job, like, it was like, y'all aren't going to fire me. I'm going to quit is what I said in my head. So, and my husband, Falcon, he's extremely supportive. We've been married for 20 years, but he was
he's pretty cute. I've seen the pictures.
Oh, he's real cute. Yeah.
You guys make some beautiful babies too.
And he was like, I love you, but we ain't moving. So we had to stay in the area, and he had already followed me a couple times. So
that's fair.
Yeah. So I was at my own OBGYN checkup, and she said there's an opening at the hospital for this hospitalist position. And now here I am.
I love
years later, and I couldn't imagine not being a hospitalist.
So have you been where you are now since 2016?
Between two hospitals, yes, but I've been a hospitalist.
So for 10 years now? Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you
And
found
I'll retire.
your way.
I will retire and I'll be a hospitalist.
Yeah.
So I like it because for me, it allowed me to spend time with my children and not miss things, take care of aging parents, things like that. So,
I mean, I think one of the benefits is the schedule, not having that. And I still don't understand why there is that office hours overlap with on-call hours, having patients either waiting in the waiting room for you or waiting in the L&D room for you. It's got to feel so stressful to that doctor.
Yep. Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense to have someone cover your butt. And then that person also gets a nice night's sleep.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hence the safety.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you've got two kids. How old are they now?
18 and 16.
Okay. I feel your pain in there.
I can't even complain. They're both like very low key.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And so tell us about your births.
Yeah. So the first one, well, they were both C-sections. First one, she was born 8 weeks early.
Wow.
She had an intestinal malformation called duodenal atresia. Okay. It happens in about 1 in 10,000 pregnancies, something like that. So, of course, it happened to an OBGYN. So she was born 8 weeks early, got surgery 3 days after birth, spent a month in the NICU. She's fine now, ridiculously smart. But my C-section for that one, I had inadequate anesthesia. I could actually feel it. I knew what was happening when we do a little test to see if the anesthesia is working, and they did it, and I felt it, and I knew what it was because I've been on the other side of the table. But her heart rate was low. They went anyway. Quite the traumatic experience. So that was first birth.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was not not ideal. And for a long time, I actually questioned myself on whether or not I was like being dramatic or whatever until the second C-section. And that one was, I chose to have a C-section.
Mhm.
And being a type A person, I actually tried to control everything. So I could, the
Love it.
surgeon,
Yes.
the anesthesiologist, what day it would happen. I actually had, we don't do this anymore, and it probably shouldn't have been done then, but I actually had an amniocentesis to make sure the baby's lungs were ready.
Yeah.
Because I actually had a C-section a little bit earlier than normally.
Okay.
So I could have the person who I wanted
Yeah.
to do it. So, and that time when I had the C-section, I was like, oh, this is what it's like.
So it worked.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not feeling anything this
You had
time.
prepped yourself for another.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Mhm.
So that time it went a lot better. And that time I chose to have a C-section. Like both births have like pluses and cons. So the first one, obviously, I had that pain experience. I chose.
Did you go into labor with the first one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I just went into early labor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just went into early labor, was having contractions on a Friday. We went to the hospital. Falcon said he knew something was going on because I'm not like a loud person, but on the way to the hospital, I was like clutching the door handle, and so as I was having contractions, and it just kind of spiraled from there.
You were working.
Yeah. So the second time I chose a C-section, repeat C-section, mostly because it was like convenient for work, to be honest. A decision I regret. Wish I would have tried for a VBAC because I'm not even at that job anymore, and so you always have like
hindsight.
Yeah, hindsight. But those were my births.
Yeah. What kind of support did you have for yourself around those births and postpartum?
That's a great question. Not enough?
Not enough.
The right answer?
Yeah.
So for the first one, this is my first child. She was in the NICU. We were visiting her every day, twice a day.
That is so hard.
Yeah. So I cried every day.
Yeah.
And I finally like limited myself to crying 3 times a day.
Okay.
Because that was like something I could control because I couldn't control nothing else. So,
right. You're like, all right, my third time's coming up.
Third time is coming. And then that's it. And then we can restart the next day. Okay. So that that was like the thing I could control. I didn't see anybody. I totally should have. We didn't like check in with anybody. There wasn't like a postpartum depression check early or anything like that. So really just my husband and my family and friends. And then after the second time, I was a lot more, and I was super anxious the first time. Like I used to ultrasound myself and stuff like that. So
doctors are the worst.
Yeah, like the worst. Super anxious. And then the time I wasn't anxious is when she got diagnosed with the intestinal malformation on the ultrasound. So, second time around, I was like, well, I did it the first time. The second time I was like, well, I can do whatever. And I was a lot more relaxed that time. So I didn't feel like I needed so much support. And she was full term. So things were easier then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How interesting, though, that you had these experiences. And like you said, of course, the OBGYN is going to have some issues, complications. And I see that a lot, too, in midwifery care.
All of us.
Doulas, all the birth workers, and I think the anxiety sometimes can just be higher within people who do birth work because we see all the things that can happen.
Yeah.
And then our brains, of course, go to that place of fear and anxiety and worry. And so we're like, well, surely it's going to happen to me. And I see it a lot in the community too with repeat clients who had an easy or, no birth is easy, but straightforward birth with the second or third baby thinking, well, surely I'm going to get hit hard this time. Like something wrong is going to happen this time. I don't know if it might just be a woman thing. I know my husband doesn't really worry about anything. I'm like, don't you worry? Aren't you anxious about shit? But having your experiences, how do you think that has impacted the way that you take care of women now?
Yeah. So definitely hard stop in a C-section if somebody's having pain. So that's like, we have to fix this. I have
to ask you, have you listened to the podcast, The Retrievals?
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
That really got to me. And I think, I think I've talked about it on this podcast already. Everyone needs to listen to this, especially the second season, where they talk about pain in C-sections, and the ego within the medical field is such a deterrent, a hindrance to women getting proper care.
Yeah. I'm actually going to be part of a advisory panel for a study that's being done out of UPenn or Pittsburgh, I can't remember, to look at C-sections and anesthesia during C-sections. So I'm excited about that.
I'm very happy to hear that. So I just need to interject here with a quick message from one of my most favorite businesses out there in the birth field. The Educated Birth is an amazing resource for doulas, birth workers, and especially educators. I use their toolkit myself. I use plenty of their handouts. I think that the work that they're doing is invaluable to the communities we're serving. Some of you might recognize Cheyenne Varner from our 2 Labor Birth Doula trainings, as she teaches one of our segments, and she is also the founder, creator, and illustrator behind The Educated Birth. You bring heart, skill, and intention to your work. Shouldn't your teaching tools do the same? The Educated Birth's Toolkit binder is a game-changing resource trusted by hundreds of birth workers. With over 155 pages of inclusive, illustrated education on pregnancy, labor, birth, and postpartum, it helps your clients feel seen and informed. Sturdy cardstock pages, section dividers, and a thoughtful design make it a practical, beautiful tool you'll reach for again and again. Also, get 10% off with code 2LABOR at theeducatedbirth.store. Care deeply, teach clearly. Good. So, I'm always like, oh, universe, you gave me this experience so that I could make sure no one else has it. Yeah. So sure. Hard stop in a C-section if someone's feeling it. All right. What else?
Having a baby prematurely can be really scary. And I can't ever guarantee that children are going to be okay. But I often tell people, like, there will be a time when this won't feel so crazy. In the beginning, though, it can be hard, like having your baby in the NICU, because it's not what you anticipated. And you never forget it, but it will get easier.
Time is funny like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now, as a woman of color, and I know you take care of patients from every culture, how, and just knowing the statistics around maternal mortality, especially in Black women, how, or would you say your practice or the way that you practice, how does that shift when you are taking care of a Black patient?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sometimes I have to be a bit more intentional that I am going to do everything I can to make sure you and your baby are safe.
Yeah.
Like, I am
really speak those words out loud.
Yeah, 100% your advocate. Sometimes I don't have to say, like, I just walk in the room and they're like, hey, like, surprised to see me.
Yes.
I had a patient the other day. This was a couple weeks ago. I walked in the room and she was like, "You're Black." And I was like, "Yeah, girl, I'm a light bright, but I'm Black." Yes. So just sort of like establishing that rapport. I often don't have to say anything, but I will explicitly say, like, I will make sure that I'm going to do everything I can to keep you and your baby safe. Yeah.
Yeah. I recently had a doula submit their certification. She's a Black doula. Western America, not near us. And she had a Black client and Black couple. And they had so many fears around the kind of care that they were going to receive. So it was very important to them that they hired a Black doula. They did so much prep work around how they were going to feel safe in labor. And so much work. She did like 3 or 4 extra appointments with them. I'm reading her certification. Like, oh, she's amazing. She did so good. And then when they showed up in labor, the woman at the front desk was Black. I'm crying already. The nurse who did their intake was Black.
Mhm.
Her nurse, it was that they were assigned to, was Black. The hospitalist that came in was Black. And it was like every star aligned.
Right.
And it was like, we did all this work for nothing.
Right.
But really, they did.
Yeah,
They were able to find that
right,
safety.
Right.
But it's just funny how that all shook out.
Yep.
And I know when I bring a patient of color in and you're working, or, because in our area, we don't have a lot of providers of color.
Mm-mm.
And so, I try to do my little behind the scenes coordination if I'm lucky enough to have a patient of color.
Right.
Behind the scenes coordination of like texting my favorite Black nurse or texting my favorite, physician or midwife of color, like, when are you going to be on call this week? Like, let's like stack the odds in our favor here. But I know it does have this just like their shoulders drop.
Yeah, for sure.
There's some relief there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So this is a doula podcast.
Yes.
We got to talk doula stuff.
Yes.
How often would you say you do actually work and collaborate with a doula?
Yeah, so at our hospital, I would say probably 20-25% of our births, people have a doula.
That's
so
it?
A good number. Yeah, I think it might be more than that because it depends on the practice.
Yeah, definitely practice dependent.
Yeah, it's not half. So
yeah,
I would say really just maybe
we got to do some
25%.
Yeah. Okay. And so walk us through, let's be honest. When you see that there's a doula in the room, what's your first? Are you like, oh, good. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go. Or are you like,
no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to actually have a team here.
Yeah. It's more of a team. So definitely some doctors feel threatened in a way by a doula. And I can understand that. Like, they feel like maybe it's like encroaching in their territory. But for me, like, my lane is OBGYN. I do it incredibly well. And I can work with other people who do their lane very well. Like, that's how we create the best birth experience for the person who's in front of us. So that's what we all should do. So, my lane is OBGYN. I'm happy to work with anybody else. So I definitely don't have that sort of like, my ego isn't affected because I'm still going to be good at what I do. So,
and you're the medical part.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's what we need you there for.
Yeah. So I always actually make a point at some point in the conversation to acknowledge the doula and introduce myself just so I can like signal like, hey, I see you and I appreciate you being here and working with this person.
I love that.
So that's one thing. And then, we just kind of feel it out and see how it goes. Most often they're working more closely with the nurse. I've certainly had the nurses say, my God, I could not have gotten through that birth if it wasn't for the doula.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, because it can be a challenge. Sometimes, every now and again, it's not frequent, especially around here. We have somebody who comes in who starts off with that adversarial stance.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's not helpful.
No, it's not.
So we really...
In any role.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and everything is a fight kind of thing, or they're like not giving the opportunity for trust and things like that. They're always assuming that we're like not looking out for the best interest. That can be difficult, but thankfully that doesn't happen often.
Yeah. I definitely have doulas or I see, on my doula Facebook groups and different things all over the country, doulas asking questions like, are we supposed to introduce ourselves to the doctor when they come in? Is it okay if we have a conversation with them too? Or are we just supposed to be, silent in the background?
Right.
And I always think, and I mean, you know how I practice, we all deserve to have our voice in the game. And I think that really helps the client feel like we are a team.
Yeah.
And when I say that, it doesn't mean that a doula should ever speak for the client or make a decision for the client. I really think that a doula's role, obviously, is emotional support, physical support, educational support. But what I also share is that we bring options into the room because, and you and I had a situation last year where we were both taking care of somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I love that I made your Instagram grid. But what I think a doula, a benefit of having a doula is, and really the benefit of being the doula,
Right.
is that we get to practice in all of the hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
We get to see what all of the different providers and home birth midwives and birthing center midwives, what tricks they have up their sleeves.
Right.
And so when we enter into a room where a decision needs to be made about something, right? If it's pain relief, if it's newborn decisions, if it's, even if it's position change, we might have some other options we've seen used elsewhere that provider or that nurse isn't familiar with.
Right.
And so, when we had someone, we were talking about sterile water papules, sterile water injections, and it's something that I brought up to you, and you hadn't heard, or you hadn't worked with it.
I hadn't heard of them.
And so tell me how that conversation kind of went down in your head.
Right. Yeah. So you texted me like, are sterile water injections a possibility? And I was like, in my head, I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know what these are. So, no.
Well, the background was the client had been in labor for a long time already. And she was an 8 on my pain relief scale, which means she really didn't want the epidural. But she was having horrendous back labor the entire time.
Yeah.
So, will you explain what sterile water injections are?
Their water is like just underneath the skin, and it's multiple little injections, and it acts as like a distraction actually from the pain. It can be very effective because of course I had to look into it. I'm always curious to learn new things.
I love that about
you. So
they hurt like hell.
Yes.
Going in.
Yes.
Have you done them now?
I haven't.
I'll give you a tip.
Right.
If you have someone that you feel like this would be a good option to try, you and 3 other nurses.
Yeah, there's a midwife who I work with. She told me she does them, and she was like, she had done it since we had spoken.
She did it with me recently, and that's who I learned it from, with bringing the 3 other nurses in. I was like, this is brilliant.
Yes, she was like, you got to bring like a bunch of people in to do it all
the
together.
4 of them at the same time, or because if you do one, they're not going to want any more.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then I remember my response was, no, but I can maybe like give her some fentanyl or like something. And you were like, we can't do sterile water injections, but we can do fentanyl. And I was like, well, damn, I guess she got a good point.
All right, Melanie, you're being a dick. Okay.
I was like, all right then. So
in my defense, I love you. And I felt like I could have a real conversation with you. I wouldn't have done that with another provider probably. But to be clear.
Yeah. And I was like, well, damn, she's right. We can't, why are we doing fentanyl? I can't do this like very low risk intervention. So this is how we all should learn. Like,
but then you got curious instead of getting defensive, instead of an ego presenting itself and saying, you're a doula, I'm the doctor, let me do my thing, which another provider would very easily have said. And so you went and you made some changes in your hospital.
Yeah, I brought it up and like, hey, do we do sterile water injections? What can we do? Has anybody ever heard of them?
Yeah.
And apparently a couple of people have. Apparently we had a protocol. I just had never heard of it before. So.
But that's a problem, right? If there actually is already a protocol in place, but it's not being taught, it's not being shared, it's not being offered. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
And thank you, because like just bringing up those things. This is how we all like learn and grow and help people get their best care.
But even being open to hearing something from, I think what I've run into for so many years being in this lane, and so many people have said, "Are you going to become a midwife? Are you going to?" And no, I really like this lane where I am. I don't want the responsibility that you have. I don't want to do all the school that you've had to do. I like the emotional support that I get to offer people. And I can talk about options, but I don't know all of the medical background, the medical risks of each one down to a T like you do. I don't know how to perform these procedures. I'm definitely not a surgeon.
Right.
I would never pretend to be one.
Right.
But what I find is that, the doula's lane is really the bottom tier of the roles in that room sometimes. And really, again, that stems back to that ego situation. The nurse, the midwife or doctor, anesthesia. But, you kind of hinted upon how some doulas can be adversarial or some providers can have that like ingrained idea of what that relationship is going to be like. And that's just so sad to me because I think why my job even exists is because there are gaps in modern healthcare. And your podcast talks about it all the time. It is a system.
It's a system, yes.
When you choose to birth in a system to really be cared for as an individual, you got to work for it.
Yeah, 1,000%. That's just the reality of how the
Absolutely.
system is. And there's so many layers and pieces to it. I don't think anybody comes to this wanting to fight or be adversarial or wanting things to be difficult. It's just that it just sort of plays out that way, unfortunately. Like sometimes you feel like you have to fight. Actually, sometimes you actually do have to fight.
Yeah.
But, and I don't think doctors are trying to be, assholes or whatever.
Yeah.
We're not actually even taught from the beginning to center the person giving birth. Let me give you an example.
Interesting.
Okay. Like my own personal evolution as a physician. And I say this because I say if I can grow, anybody can grow. I used to roll my eyes at birth plans. What is this?
And now you teach about birth plans.
Yeah, now I teach about birth plans. Okay. So also, and this one, every time I say this is so embarrassing. It never occurred to me, probably for about 10 years, that before I check somebody's cervix, I should say, is it okay if I check your cervix?
Right.
We just
crazy thought.
Yeah. And it's not even that I was ever mean, right? You just go in and you're like, hey, I'm Dr. Rankins.
Yeah.
I'm going to check your cervix. Let your legs.
But you assume that they know that's what you're there for.
Assume that they know. Well, or even more so that I have made the decision that this is what I'm going to do because that's how our system sets it up, that we just go in, we do what we need to do without stopping for a second and saying, hey, are you okay if we do this?
Yeah.
And then if she wait for an answer, and if she says no, then being like, all right, okay, we'll do it later or we won't, just kind of taking that sort of approach. It didn't occur to me because that's not how we're taught.
The idea of consent, even to touching, is a pretty new idea.
Yeah, and isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah,
it's
fucked up.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, it really takes the individual's experience again and throws it out the window because who knows what this person's background is? Are they a survivor of trauma? Do they, what are their goals around this birth? What could potentially trigger them to feel something completely different than what they're feeling right now? It's wild.
Yeah. That was one of the things I learned doing social media and the podcast and stuff, that I would hear that a lot, that people were so they hated that the doctor didn't stop and just ask for a second if it was okay. And it just hadn't occurred to me.
Yeah. But again, what I love about you is instead of defending why and standing, 10 toes deep, this is why we do it. You sat back and, that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
That's something I'm going to incorporate into my practice.
It's very easy to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is next for you? I know you said you're going to retire in this position, but you also said you don't like thinking what's 5-10 years ahead.
Yeah, I know. That's a great question. So definitely continuing with my podcast. I consider that my third child in a way.
It's so good.
Oh, thank you.
It's really good.
Thank you.
It's a great resource for doulas for people interested in birth work, but really a great resource for pregnant people.
Well, thank you.
Because it gives a whole other side of the coin and the perspective of an OBGYN, but of an OBGYN that's doing things a little bit differently. And so really what you're offering them are options.
Right.
And this idea that your care doesn't have to look like the way that if it's not feeling right to you, then there are things that you can do to change it.
Yeah.
And so it's giving them power.
Yeah.
Birth with power.
There we go.
There you go.
So education is in my blood. My mom taught math for 50 years.
Okay.
My sister is a principal. My other sister was a principal. So it's like, that's like my education thing, which I love. And then other than that, I realized that education is important, but like figuring out how to make deeper systems change is important, particularly around culture and the culture on labor and delivery, because so much of how birth unfolds is just based on the culture of a place. And if the culture supports like patience and respect and listening to people, then everything kind of falls into place from that.
Yeah.
And the culture can be vastly different from one hospital to another.
Absolutely.
So just trying to come up with ways to help create system cultures. So that's in the back of my mind of like where I want to go next.
Yeah. I will say 18 years ago when I started working as a doula, I didn't practice in the hospital where you are now. And it's one of my favorite hospitals to go to now.
Well, that's good to know.
So change has occurred.
And things can change, and it's actually not as difficult as people make it out to be. So I'm glad to hear that. We should all be working with doulas. We should all be, because ultimately, like the goal is for that woman, that person, center her, what happens
and her
partner,
Yeah.
what happens around that in order to create that birth experience that's safe, that's supportive, all of those things. Now, notice I didn't say it's automatically unmedicated or it's automatically vaginal.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's going to be a cesarean.
And even those people that are coming in for a scheduled C-section deserve to feel the utmost care and their voices being heard. You know, there are still tweaks that we can do for a scheduled C-section to make that abdominal birth feel special and unique and calming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, I will say I do worry a little bit about doulas because one, you know, there's been so much pressure on y'all to like put the whole maternal health system on your back and save it, which is not that's not fair.
No.
And not the way it's supposed to be. But I feel like I just see folks burning out a little bit, like some of the same pressures of like you having to be at a birth for what could be 48 hours. You know?
There's no shift change there. Yeah.
So I hope that, you know, you're working and helping to make sure that people can do it in a sustainable way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it takes delegating. What we talk about in our training is, you know, a lot of self-care tips, and you can't do it all and you don't have to be it all.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of doulas do feel that pressure when they sign on with a client that they are the end all resource for that client. They are on 24/7. They are the childbirth educator. They are the lactation consultant and educator. They are everything. And really, I think what sends a more impactful message and really drives this information in is when we find other providers of services that this family might need that is aligned with the message that they need to hear. And we're delegating that message to be spread into that person, they're much more likely to receive it in a way that it really makes sense and it takes hold rather than just one person telling them everything. Because it's really easy to be like, well, she's a little crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I trust everything she says. But if the chiropractor, if the OBGYN, if the nurse, if the acupuncturist, if the childbirth educator, the lactation help, if everyone is creating the same model of care, then it seems like that's almost more real.
Yeah. Very much so.
And then that's also why I've started shifting. I mean, I am still a doula. I'm still on call a lot, but I'm hosting retreats now, and I'm hosting retreats specifically for women, not necessarily only birth workers. Sometimes I do a specific birth worker retreat, but I mean, Nicole, you should come because it is a weekend of stepping outside of the day-to-day responsibilities and having someone else care for you. No one is allowed to do their own dishes. There's a loose schedule of like wellness activities. There is freedom and downtime to do whatever you want. If you want to curl up on the couch and read a book, if you want to take a walk, if you want to sleep till noon, that's also available. Every meal is cooked for you. You also get to interact and meet other women who are in completely different fields. And I don't know about you, but I mean, you work with women a lot, but usually, there's a partner and maybe a same-sex couple. But when there's a man in the vicinity, the energy is different. It's just different. My husband came to help me cook at one of these retreats, my first one. And I was like, I love you, but never again. Just the energy is different. Women don't feel that ability to like really let go. No makeup. You're in sweatpants the whole time. Like we're drinking wine, we're eating good food. We can talk about anything. And it's so funny how quickly the conversation gets deep.
I'm sure.
I mean, we're talking history. We're going in there. All the things. And it's so beautiful. So, that's what I am moving into with just holding space for people who, in every field, who feels that burnout of like, I have to hold all the things. I have this job. I have this family. Even though I have a job, I'm still responsible for all the groceries and the kids' schedule. And, it's just too fucking much.
Yeah, for sure.
So I appreciate you saying that though. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been so great. And of course, my mind is spinning of different ways that we can collaborate further on making some of these system changes.
Yeah, for sure. I just like, I can see us sitting in that room like so many years ago. You just never know how
in our massage chairs.
Never know how life unfolds. So
I know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here, but also for serving this community.
And thank you. Same.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot. Please check out Birth with Power. Where can they listen?
Everywhere.
Spotify,
every platform. Apple, whatever. Every platform. Yeah.
Your website?
drnicole.rankins.com. I am on all the socials everywhere. Dr. Nicole Rankins.
Birth plan class?
Yeah, that's on hold right now. I'm kind of rethinking some things and how I want to do it. So it's on hold, but just follow me on social, get on my email list, and you'll get updated.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, we would love to hear from you. Please, any feedback, questions, ideas for topics, reach out. You can find me at Melanie at twolabor.com. You can DM us on Instagram, twolabor. You can find us on Facebook, twolabor. And please check out the website, twolabor.com, for any of our upcoming trainings. We have a training at the end of February. We've got one coming up in April. We also have a really exciting new addition to our workshop setup that we'll be doing in Brooklyn, New York at the Grand Street Healing Project. So please take a look, sign up for your own training, get your doula certification with us. We would love to have you join our community. We also have some retreats coming up, so reach out to us to find out more information there if you're interested. Like I said in this episode, birth workers need self-care too, so please join us for one of those. And thank you, as always, to our producers, Mike and Perry at Vera House Studios. This episode was recorded at Vera House Studios in Richmond, Virginia.